Welcome back, everybody, to me being annoyed by the Wheel of Time. We continue our traipsing through that final one, A Memory of Light, and so far it's still pretty fucking dark. And we'll talk about chapters 7 to 19 today. Yes, we're making a bit larger steps because, frankly, there's not that much happening in this book. It's a real shame, and yeah, it's time to get a bit annoyed, shall we? Cheers. Alright, so today we're going to talk about where we left off last time and see if there's anything interesting going on in this book so far today, right? I mean, see, the problem with this book is, so far for me, and I've read on further. I'm already like about 60% through this monster. It doesn't get better yet. My point is that there are a lot of flaws in here that we need to talk about structurally, mostly flaws structurally, and that is, war is boring. I'll just be very honest here with you. War is pretty fucking boring. Especially large-scale battles. They're not really interesting, they're not fun to describe, and there's very few people who manage to capture war in a meaningful way. And the way you do that is by ignoring all the tactics and all the strategies and shit, but by dragging it down to the personal level. And that's an important aspect, and we don't get that here. Like earlier, like large-scale battles in, say, the Shadow Rising, at the end of the Shadow Rising, Rising? Yeah, that one. You know what I mean, Book 4. Outside of Kyrian, the battle with Rand and everything, that one was actually, that was a good mass combat. I did enjoy that. That was well done. And it worked because it was fairly personal. We got like both Matt's and Rand's perspective, them trying to figure out what's going on, all of that. It kind of worked. We don't get that anymore. What we get instead is Brandon Sanderson's attempts at describing strategy, or Robert Jordan's, and it's unnecessarily complicated and doesn't really go anywhere. And I think there's an underlying problem there that has to do with the idea of what makes epic fantasy epic. And we might have to talk about that in like a generic video at some point, because what we see here is just ramping up the scale. So what we do, like where we left off last time, right, is with Rand giving over overall command to Elaine, who then gives command to the great generals. And we need to talk about the great generals, but we'll have like more of a discussion about that later, like maybe in tomorrow's video, because gods, it's a stupid idea. But yeah. So they plan the military defense of Rand's land, whatever that continent is called. I mean, it doesn't have a name, so whatever, that place. They're planning all of that, while Rand's job is to go to to the Chambers of Doom. No, he has to go to Sheol Ghul and go in there and do whatever with the Dark One, which has never really been explained how that works, because how can you? So we don't get that. What we get instead is, you know, the planning session. And you know what? Like, I've played, you know, strategy games when I could still see enough to play good computer games and stuff. I've played my share of that kind of stuff. But seriously, the way Brandon Sanderson describes that mass combat, or the planning of that strategy, is just like on a level that is sort of like playing Risk, the board game. Literally, it's like, all right, I'll like it takes like 5 minutes to plan. Yeah, you go in this place and you defend this place and you defend this place and you defend this place. Good thing we have like 4 great captains and 4 places where we really want to fight. That's gonna make it work. And seriously, it just makes war sound like something that everyone can do, like in these days of, you know, war. Not that, you know, war wasn't always there, but right now it's very popular in the media, right? Every single person on social media seems to be a great tactician, and none of us know shit about it, because war is pretty fucking difficult to understand. And having just like someone like Elaine, who, yes, maybe got taught some stuff because she's a princess, sit there and is like, all right, good thing we have 4 great captains. Whatever makes great captains great, we don't know. But apparently they get like certified by the Great Captains Association of Randland or something like that. Um, I have no idea. We'll just drop them on those 4 random places on the map to have battles there. And then we go on and do that. And no. I don't know. Because what we see here is once again like a structure thing. I'm not sure if this is Brandon Sanderson's doing or Robert Jordan's doing, because I don't look up like backup material to see who did write which bit and say what in which interview or whatever, because frankly I don't really care. But what we see here is a very clear structure, right? If you want to see the plot line of this novel, it's basically one large thread. It's like we have our main characters, Egwene, Elaine, Rand, Mat, and Perrin. And everyone is basically running to Shale Ghul to have that final battle. But that's a pretty short novel, and we know that Brandon Sanderson likes his large novels, and we know that Robert Jordan did like his sort of large-ish novels as well. So what we're going to do there, because we need to split that A Memory of Light into like 3 volumes, is we divide them up. So instead of like having one big battle, we split them up into 4 individual battles between which we can jump, like in like chapters, and each of them is just boring mass combat, and that's a problem. It just makes the whole thing convoluted, because we know already at the end of the day those 4 will be reunited into one final battle. That's chapter 37, which has like 9 hours, 9 bloody hours of boring combat. I'm already cringing in anticipation, I can tell you that. So yeah, that's already like unnecessary and annoying. Now the next problem I have with this book, and I swear I never thought I would say that, but the big problem with this volume so far, with this novel so far, is that we're mostly focusing, almost exclusively focusing on our 4 main characters. Not even 4, like, there's a little Mat in this one finally, but we mostly focus on Rand, Elaine, Egwene, and maybe a little Perrin. And those are not necessarily the most interesting characters. And they just go into those battles, and it's super bloody boring. It's like we jump from, Elaine burning down her own city to then hunt Trollocs 150 miles over farmland into a forest to then attack them in a forest. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, bro. That sounds unnecessary, but if you feel like it, then maybe go and do it. This doesn't sound like proper tactics. It sounds like something I would play on a miniatures board game, maybe, if I got the right bonuses to actually chase someone, have enough movement or whatever. It does not feel like actual war. It feels like someone who has only ever played war on a computer game or board game, imagining like grand strategies. It's like the level of complexity of playing your war out in like with plastic soldiers in a fucking sandpit. That's what we get here, and it kind of annoys me because it could have been so much better. And then there's these weird inconsistencies, right? There's one scene where Elaine and gang decide that they need to cross a river, to have the river as a barrier between them and the Trollocs, so they can use their cannons to shoot down the Trollocs and everything. And that's fine. I can live with that. That sounds like sort of reasonable strategy. So what they do is they build bridges across the river to then burn down those bridges. And And there's no reason why they should do that, because all the while until that point and right after that point, they use their channelers to just make gateways. And you can make gateways across the river. Unlike some of those gateways that they are suddenly able to drop everywhere, when it's like, I thought you need to know where you go with a big gateway, but apparently that does no longer count. Whatever. You can just use gateways to cross over to the other side of that river. No, we need to suddenly think hard about gaining enough time to build bridges. And look, if you want that, and it's fine if you want to include that idea of we need time or whatever, have those constraints on, then you need to come up with a reason and mention a reason why suddenly the bridges need to be built, and it's no longer just a portal that you need, just a gateway that you can open. It would be fine, even if you just include a line of all of our channelers are so tired and exhausted they can't do it right now. That's fine. You've been fighting a war in a forest for a while. It would work, but it's not in there. Suddenly they're yeah, there's a river and we could build some bridges. You idiot! You bloody idiot. Or go and say, you know what, we need to use the bridges so our channelers are fresh so they can shoot fireballs over the river afterwards. Totally legit. Give a fucking reason if you want me to take your war seriously. And I can't, the way this is going right now. Plus, mass combat scenes are not very interesting to, read about. It's yeah, we send more horses somewhere. Trollocs scream. Trollocs are disemboweled. Someone dies heroically. Trollocs... And I feel there's two bits there. One of them, mass combat over time, is just extremely repetitive. It's just a problem, right? It's just extremely repetitive. No one needs that shit after a while. I get it. And the other part is that all of this is extremely heroic because we only get the viewpoints of those people, of Lan, Mandragoran, who is who he is, or Perrin or Elaine. And they are always very bland character-wise, right? They're super bland. They're all of them are brave. All of them ignore actual suffering all the time. It's whatever, we don't talk about it. And there is no suffering. Yes, sometimes we get told that someone feels responsibility for having all these people under their command die, and that's all we get. It's I wish I could protect them all, and then you're done. And that's poor writing at the end of the day, because there's a lot of ways to make the cost, the human cost of war, more palpable in a lot of ways. And I'm not going to say, yo, go read Deadhouse Gates, because yes, you should, but you know what I mean. But there's other books about war that make war feel more personal, that show how dehumanizing that shit is. And it's not saying, oh, and another 100,000 Trollocs show up from somewhere, and you're I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, my friend, but whatever. So yeah. Shit does. It just really annoys me to no end, because it's what it is at the end of the day, and there's more than the part that we're talking about today. It is just bloat. It's unnecessary bloat of pages that does not give us any further information, anything. It's a bunch of people that I don't care about getting slaughtered by a bunch of ridiculous monsters whose apparent big danger is that they like to eat people. Which, is fairy tale scary without the actual scary that actual fairy tales provide. And I'm whatever. You do your thing. It's fine. All right. Let's talk about some of the other bits and pieces that we need to talk about here. There are actual plot lines that are sort of interesting. The one that we need to talk about is more Androl and Pevara, trying to find out what's going on. They learn that the Mahale, now that we know he's, a new Forsaken, uses a circle of channelers and Myrddraal. It's like, why do we need Myrddraal for that? I don't think they can channel. I mean, we got told they can't channel. Whatever. Is using them to turn people, and Loghain has been. We had that scene. They go, look, that's an actual working, fine plot line. I wish it would have started like a couple of books earlier, so it doesn't feel like shoehorned in here. But the whole like plotline of them working stuff out, Andral as a character with all these like weird back story that we don't know or learn about, who can not really channel but can use those gateways, and Pevara, who kind of realize that men are just actually men and channeling men are actually could be, you know, good people or whatever. All of that's fun. The way they are then down there, try and manage to actually free themselves. All of that stuff, really cool. The way it is intertwined with Perrin's Perrin and Gaul going into the Dreamlands and doing their thing there and finding that dream spike, which, you know, remember I said there will be a dream spike, yeah, getting that dream spike and using it, switching it off so they can make gateways and can actually defeat Mazrim Taim and the evil Asherman. That was pretty well done. It's not something that I would say is great literature, but it's very competently done, and it sounds and looks very much like something that Brandon Sanderson made up. I'll just say the way it is built up, the way the two storylines kind of intertwine in those two worlds, that feels very Sanderson and not very Jordan in like the way it's choreographed. But, you know, it helps. It really helps because it's like a story that's about characters that have like actual events happening to them that are not too repetitive. For now. Now, why do we need to have a Sindain in there again? The Lanfear thing. I think we need to talk about Lanfear again. Look, I don't get it. So, Lanfear is evil because Lanfear likes power, which apparently all the Forsaken do. But with Lanfear, for some reason, it's worse. And there's like that conversation that Rand has with Lanfear when he's like, no, I don't love you because you don't love me. All you do is, you know, all you love is power and yourself. And you can't trust, and you don't trust me. You need to trust me. He's like, I can't trust. I've been betrayed so many times. Like, the problem is, we don't know their backstory because we don't have that stuff. But it's just like Rand is like, no, that's no reason. Just because you got betrayed all the time and other people took advantage of you, that's no reason for you to become selfish. It's like, it's that complete disregard of how people are turned, like how people evolve, how characters evolve, and all the damage that, like, you know, going through that wonderful thing that is life will give to people. And it's just annoying as fuck because, like, we've spent like 4 books getting hammered in the face with the fact that Rand trying to become harder and harder and harder almost goes over to the Shadow after being punished by all kinds of things and making the wrong choices and shit. And he just gets saved through divine intervention that is not really explained anywhere because he's our Fireball Jesus. And then he goes to Lanfear's like, no, fuck you. You don't trust me? I will disregard what made you this way. If you don't have the divine grace, you're just fucked. And I just really feel it shows once again how women are treated like shit in these books. All of them. All the time. It's like when there's crunch time, they'll definitely get like the short end. Always. And I don't like that. Anyway, Lanfear tries to do something which is still kind of difficult to understand. I assume we'll get an explanation of why all she does is evil, but right now she's helping Perrin, which, you know, good on her. No one trusts her, no one likes her, but she's still helping Perrin. I assume there will be an ulterior motive somewhere down the road, whatever it may be. But yeah, apart from that, the Perrin and, on the other side, Andral plotline is cool because, yeah, people are moving around, people are doing things, people are interacting, people are not riding into ridiculous numbers of Trollocs again and again and again, or trying to stage a chase over 150 miles, which, yeah, no. Don't. See, that's okay, I guess. Um, there's one interesting thing in there that I find almost positive, and that's the Gawain storyline with Egwene and how Gawain feels completely useless because he's water to someone who's just like leveling hundreds of thousands of Trollocs with magic. So it's like, what's my job here? And I did like that facet because it kind of shows that Gawain is doing something clever here. Now, I know this will not end well because we all know that he will, kill himself with stupid magic because he's that kind of guy. But and it's this dissatisfaction or whatever is certainly built up like a as a what you might call foreshadowing for what will happen later, or like so we have a little of a reason why he's doing what, or why he will do something stupid later on, which I guess is go and get himself heroically killed by fighting a Forsaken or whatever, something like that, spectacularly. But anyway, at least we got a little character building there. All right, what else needs to be talked about? All right, let's talk about the ugly shit, right? So Rand, we need to go back to the slavery thing, unfortunately. Rand shows up and, walks into Abu Dar. Also, Mat walks into Abu Dar to reacquaint himself with Tuon, and that's all fun and dandy. And then Rand shows up and's like, all right, we need to make peace because, otherwise problems and shit. And they make that sort of peace there, and they make a deal. And our good buddy Rand is just hand-waving again the fact that of women being enslaved. And there is a there's a thing that we need to talk about the slavery with the Shan-Shan that we need to talk about tomorrow again. But I want to just point out that there is Rand has the chance. He can do that deal with Tuon, and it is in the power of both Robert Jordan or Brandon Sanderson to make Rand force Tuon in that one-on-one conversation to give over more of the Domani, of the channeling women that are enslaved. And Rand just like, oh well, I guess I'll just have to live with it. And that's pretty fucked up. Because afterwards, we don't get like Rand feeling sorry for them or anything. No, it's just like shrugged off. So apparently slavery is just no big deal. The other problem with slavery we'll talk about tomorrow when we talk about Egwene talking to Tuon. Because there's a underlying issue with how slavery is treated in these books that is even more abhorrent and kind of stupid and a lot more. But it's there, and I just want to point out that, like, in this book, Brandon Sanderson had, like, two options, right? Only in this book, two distinct moments where, with Rand being the Ubermensch that he is and the power that he has, he could, in two different situations, he could have just said, all right, I'll make sure they free their Domani, or at least the ones they took in our lands, or anything like that. And twice he didn't. And twice he's like, yeah, well, end justifies means. I guess I'll just feel bad for myself a little because I just did that. And that's pretty fucked up. Just saying, I mean, like, if if you as a writer think that that's a good guy, then you're definitely somewhere in the wrong because, don't do that shit, man. It's bad. It's really, really bad. All right. One thing that is sort of decent is how Perrin, finds out how all those great captains, and we need to talk about the great captains again tomorrow. God's how I really loathe that thing. Anyway, so the great captains are corrupted by Graendal in in their dreams. She manipulates them in their dreams, probably with compulsion, because that's what Grendel does. And Perrin finds out, and so I guess we'll see more of what that does. But the way that Perrin finds out and kind of figures it out over time, I'm fine with that. That's solid. I can live with that. That's sort of reasonable foreshadowing there, and I'm okay with it. What I'm not okay with is the weird Grendel situation, which just goes back to the women need to be humiliated in the most ridiculous ways in these books. By which I mean. Grendel got reconstituted, so I guess Shaida Haram killed her at the end of Towers of Midnight when he was pissed off with her. So she could be reconstituted in a different body, and of course it has to be an explicitly ugly body. Of course it has to. Why? Why even fucking bother, right? Why? What's the narrative reason behind that? Now you can argue, and I'll explain I'll play devil's advocate for a second here, Dark One's advocate for a second. The point is, Grendel was supposed to be very vain, right? She's supposed to be vain, and she's supposed to be vain and only look after beauty. So to punish her for her misdeeds, she'll be made ugly. So she hates herself. And I'm like, yeah. You can do that, but that's the most childish form of childish view of fucking justice out there, or anything. It's no, you do that because you like to see someone who was fairly competent up to now, and you want to see those people brought low and down because they're supposed to be evil, and we do that by making them comically ugly because then we can all laugh at her. Isn't that fun? No, it's not funny. It's stupid. It's so bloody stupid. Really, the fixation on good and beautiful and ugly, which seem to be the only two descriptions for physical descriptions in these books, and of course it's good people, good looking, bad people, too good looking or ugly, and we switch them around. It's fuck's sake. So to pull this all together before I lose my patience with this, nothing really much happens. We have a fairly entertaining story with what's his name? Andal Gainhold, whatever that guy, and Pevara in the Black Tower. They save everyone with the help of Perrin, which is neatly done. Perrin runs around in the Dreamlands, figures out that something's going on with Grendel, while the rest is really, really boring and bad. Really boring and bad mass combat that doesn't make any sense, and really terrible strategy because it sounds like someone just drew a map and just drew some errors and felt that would look like good tactics. And yeah, and Matt being Matt, which has become something of it was fun for a while, but it's the way it has been overdone and rammed down at this point, of Matt trying to not be that person. Oh no, sir, no. It just look, it was funny for a while, but if you do the same joke too many times, I don't know, it gets kind of boring, really. I guess that's just where we are right now. The big battle is about to begin, or is about to turn. We have Matt and the Seanchan are now joining the battle. Matt has gotten a cool-looking eye patch, so there's that at least. Rand is on his way into, the Valley of Thakandar, to face down the Dark One. However you do that, because the Dark One obviously is a non-corporeal entity, so how do... I guess we'll find out. And at the same time, everyone else is fighting meaningless battles that have been extended to make this book longer, so you can pretend you have a long book, I guess. And all of that's boring. You could take out so much of this, make the battles feel a bit more real. If you really have to, just concentrate on 1 or 2 battles, because after the 10th charge of horses into Trollocs, I just get bored. and make the whole thing a bit more meaningful. Stretch out the interesting plot lines that are about like people, individual people doing something interesting. Make those, put them on, make them longer. Let them stretch throughout the novel, maybe even the previous novel, that kind of stuff, right? And then, at the end of the day, don't make Rand such a fucking dickhead and just ignore like these aspects like the slavery bit. It would be so cool. Well, I mean, it would be a decent book. But so far, this one is definitely worse than both The Gathering Storm or Towers of Midnight. And like, we did not need 3 volumes of that crap. It would have been fine with 2, possibly even 1. With proper editing, someone who actually thought about things, and yeah, someone realizing that having more numbers doesn't make it any better. Also, Igatan burning is so much more fun than Caemlyn burning. Just saying. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you had more fun reading this book. I'll let you know about like more things that annoy me in the next one. And until then, cheers.